I hired a consultant in the very beginning just because we were OTC. I didn't understand. There were specific labeling requirements like the font size and what needs to go on. And so hiring that consultant in the beginning really helped me. So those are the kind of critical decisions you need to make in the beginning. And really, again, it really depends on what you're doing. That's a requirement for sun. But if it's not sun, and it's not supplements or it's not something that requires FDA approval, then it's just not that difficult. But going into a national retailer is going to be challenging. So you need to make sure that you're prepared and you have a strong team and someone on that team who has a great deal of experience in dealing with national retailers.
You're listening to the Black to Business Podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall. Welcome back to the Black to Business Podcast. I'm so excited that you are here, and I want to let you know that this week on the podcast for our 110th, yes, I am so excited that we are here, episode, we are switching it up. So we've been listening to you, our audience, and keeping a pulse on what industries you're in or looking to go into. And typically on the Black to Business Podcast, we do like to speak on topics that can serve across many industries so that it's useful for most people. And we've had the opportunity to cover so many incredible topics, and our audience has certainly grown and spans across many different industries. However, something we haven't spoken about in depth, now we have touched on this in conversation with a few guests, but we haven't dedicated an entire episode to it. And you know we like to go deep. So we're sure some of you are looking to get your brand into retail stores. So we wanted to ensure that you're prepared and kind of know what to expect when that time comes for you. So today we've invited the lovely Katonya Breaux, founder and president of Unsun Cosmetics, Inc., which is a Los Angeles-based cosmetic company dedicated to providing beauty and skin protection to women of all skin tones. Her award-winning brand has been recognized by Allure, Forbes, Vogue, and so many more. And this small Black-owned business expanded from DTC, which is also known as direct-to-consumer, to major retail stores like CVS and many more. So Katonya is going to share some tips and advice on how to work with retailers and get your products in retail stores. We're touching on things like when to know if your product is retail store ready, deciding on which of your products to put in store, and how to prepare, manage those relationships with your retail partners, and so much more. So let's dive in. Katonya, welcome to the Black to Business Podcast. I'm so excited about today's conversation, but I want to give you a warm welcome to the show and so glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Monique. I'm happy to be here.
Yes. So I always like to start off with, if you could just introduce yourself to my audience. I know we're going to dive further in your journey, but if you could just tell my audience about you, what is it that you do in your business, and kind of how did you get where you are today?
Yeah, of course. Well, my name is Katonya Breaux. I'm the founder of Unsun Cosmetics, and Unsun is a clean mineral-based sunscreen line made for people of color because as a darker-skinned Black woman, I was very frustrated with not being able to find a clean mineral-based formulation that worked for me. So we launched in 2016 and with one SKU, and now we have 11 SKUs across 2 lines and continuing to grow.
I love it. So I want to dive into your journey and your experience. So let's talk about what inspired you to really get into the beauty industry and some of those first steps that you took to go from this idea to conception with this problem that you saw.
Oh, well, I never had any plans to go into the beauty business, but I'm a huge advocate of just preparing yourself to be ready for whatever life throws at you. I spent 20 years as a custom home builder in New Orleans. I moved home to Los Angeles in 2013, just really burnt out from construction, not having no idea of what I wanted to do with the next phase of my life. But once I learned that the black moles and the spots that I was getting on my face was not genetic, but a result of sun damage, I became obsessed with sunscreen. So I asked a friend of mine who had a hair care line if he would introduce me to his chemist. I literally just wanted to make a sunscreen for myself, to make something that I loved. The idea of creating a brand around that was just the furthest thing from my mind. But when he developed the formula, it was so beautiful. My family loved it that we just decided, maybe I'll build a business around the sunscreen. And a huge part of that would be making women of color, and now it's everyone of color, aware that we all need sun protection. It doesn't matter our skin tone. And so Unsun was built. We started the process in 2014 and launched officially in 2016.
Wow. So idea 24, well, process in 2014, and it took 2016. So I want to talk about those early days as this CEO. Like, what were some of those challenges that you initially faced growing your brand? And was it just you? Like, what did support look like?
Well, sunscreen is different from just other cosmetic brands because sunscreen is an OTC, so it's heavily FDA regulated. And so I was on a huge learning curve. If I was just doing a body butter or a moisturizer, it would have been a much more simple process. But we created this formula with this lab. I love the formula, decided to make a business with it, went to look at the components, went to this tube manufacturer. And when he said to me, okay, have you had all your testing done, this test and that test? And I was like, okay, yeah, I don't know what those are, but no problem. We can get that done. Right. So I went back to the lab and I was like, hey, we have to get this test and that test. He was like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And I said, well, wait a minute. Why can't you do it? You made this product. And he said, well, I'm not FDA certified. So we had to start the process all over. I had to find an FDA certified lab. We had to get all of these tests done. I had to order the right components because you can't put sunscreen in just like a monolayer tube. And so it was a whole learning curve that I was on because I'd spent 20 years in construction and now I'm in beauty, and not only beauty, I'm in sun care. And it was quite a process.
I can imagine. And like you mentioned before, like it was a learning curve. So I know people who are listening are looking to go in the industry or similar industry, beauty industry. Can you talk about like how was it funding your idea, like bootstrapping, whether you sought funding, like how was it to fund this idea that you had in this product and business?
Yeah, well, we've been self-funded to date, and I'm just now preparing to do a fundraise. So it was a challenge. It was a challenge being funded because when in our early years, we did look for funding, but they wanted us to have $1 million in revenue before they would even consider investing in the brand. And it was just really tricky. And so I just said, forget it. We just continued to work until we were able to prepare for funding. But it's challenging. You know, you'll read a lot, do a friends and family round. Well, you know, myself, like a lot of Black people, we don't have friends and family that can just, you know, put hundreds of thousands of dollars in a business. You know, in the early days, you don't need that much. But it's just the language is just different and not wasn't designed for me or my community. And so I just had to figure it out. And it's challenging. That is challenging. Sun in particular is challenging because of all the tests, of all the specific components, just everything that's required. If you're just doing beauty, if you're just doing maybe a body butter or a moisturizer or eye cream, those things don't have FDA regulations. You don't have to have specific types of components. It's a lot easier to start at that rate, and you don't need as much. You could find someone with minimum order quantities of, 500 to 1,000 units. Just understand that the fewer units you buy, the more money you're going to make. Most manufacturers require a minimum of 5,000 per SKU ordered, but you can find some that allow you to order fewer, but you're going to pay more.
Got it. And so let's take a step further and talk about, I know you started off saying how you got into the industry because you realized like these things that were on your face, they weren't moles or they weren't hereditary and they weren't there was sun damage. So I want to talk about some of the common misconceptions that you hear about sunscreen usage and some of the challenges that you face combating these misconceptions, especially when it came to educating and in the Black community about sun damage.
Oh, yeah. Well, the biggest one and the most important one is that, oh, my melanin protects me. I don't need sunscreen.
Mm-hmm.
I've never worn sunscreen. And then I hear a lot of young women say that. Well, okay, honey, you're cute now. Your skin is gorgeous now. But when those premature wrinkles start popping up, when those sunspots and moles start popping up, it's going to be a different story. So, Black does crack. It is just a horrible myth that we don't have to do anything and we're just blessed with this gorgeous skin. And it is gorgeous and it's, has all of the things that we love, but we really do need to protect it. We have the ozone layer depletion. We have so much stuff going on. And that's just from a vanity aspect of it. Mm-hmm. What a lot of people of color don't realize is no, we don't get skin cancer as often as our white friends or people that we know do. But do you know the sad statistic is that our mortality rates are higher because skin cancer is not even on our radar. So when we get a weird mole, we'll just figure, oh, it's just a weird mole. And so by the time we go to get it checked out, it's too late. So that's why our mortality rates are so much higher. We just cannot take these things for granted. It's like when you know better, you do better. And it's time for us to know better.
Certainly, I so agree. That's one of the things I hear all the time. And I mean, even for me personally, facing like damage from the sun, just using certain skin products and knowing that you do need that sunscreen layer to protect your skin is very important. So I love that educational piece of it. And Katonya, despite these challenges, like what did it mean for you to enter this market and create a company for us, by us, and how has the reception been from the community with these misconceptions and challenges?
It was surprising to me how well the information was received. We still have a long way to go. We really do. But we have to give ourselves credit. Like we want to do what's best for us. We're smart enough to know what we need to do. And even though I didn't know my entire life, it was in my 40s when I discovered this. But when I learned about it, I was like, okay, you don't have to tell me twice. And I'm getting a lot of this from our sisters out there that they're like, oh, okay, I got it. And so the reception has been good. The problem though, is that I'm starting to see a big change. Once we came out with our sunscreen and we were the first clean sunscreen on the market, mineral based, which was the problem. There have always been chemical based sunscreens out there and we could use those, but I wanted a clean option. So then now you look, and I mean, all the big companies, all the white-owned companies are putting Black models in their website, Black models in their ads, no white residues, sun protection for all. But when I was looking for a sunscreen, or even as little as 2 years ago, these companies were not targeting us. They were not considering us in their processes when they were designing and making new sunscreens. But now they're getting on board because we've gotten on board. So now they know there's a market and they don't want to miss on that opportunity. So, now we're being inundated with sunscreen options, which is beautiful. And so we're getting it. I think the myths are slowly being cracked open.
Yes, I do too. And I love it. And yes, speaking of those options, I see it too, the many options. So my question for you then is, how have you been able to create a brand that stands out in this what now is like become this crowded market?
Well, we were ahead of the curve. We were the first Black-owned clean mineral-based sunscreen brand on the market. And so while everyone was scrambling to get on board, we were already here. We were already, 11 SKUs in and building relationships. So when the retailers came calling, we were ready to serve the communities that they were asking us to do that for. So I'm really grateful for that we were, with no funding, with no investment dollars, we were prepared for what's here, actually.
Yes. And speaking of what's here, let's talk about Unsun today. You say you started from 1 SKU to now 11 SKUs. Talk about your offerings and like what the product line looks like.
Well, we have two lines. We have the mass line, which is, in the CVS, Bed Bath & Beyond's going into another big retailer next year. And we have our prestige line, which is in all the clean beauty spaces, Goop, Detox Market, Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's, all of those guys. And so we have in the prestige line, we have 7 SKUs, all sun protection, except for one. We have an 8-ingredient body butter that's really amazing. And so we have highlighters and we have tinted face sunscreens. We have a face and body untinted sunscreen. We have a hand cream with SPF because we know that our hands and our necks show the age much faster than any other parts of our bodies. And I'm discovering now, girl, the thighs don't do us any favors either, but that's another one.
I'm looking at my hands now like, oh, yes.
I know, right? It really is. It's amazing. But if you think about it, our hands are always on the steering wheel. They're always doing something and they get so much exposure. So we have that in our mass line. We have the 2 tinted sunscreens, a face and body untinted sunscreen, and this incredible after sun lotion, which is really just a healing lotion because it has baobab oil in it, aloe vera oil in it, and prickly pear extract, which just amazing ingredients. So yeah, we are launching at least 1 new SKU next year and just continuing to grow, and that'll be in the mass line.
So amazing. So excited. And it sounds like delicious. I love it. And so one of the things you also mentioned is that Unsun Cosmetics is an inclusive brand. I want to talk about it's an inclusive brand that works for all skin tones. So what inspired you to create such an inclusive brand?
Well, because of my skin tone, I first and foremost, I'm a Black woman with dark skin. So I needed something for myself. But like a lot of Black families, I have 10 siblings. So, and over 125 cousins. We're a huge family. Wow. And like a lot of big Black families, girl, my sister is a light caramel complexion. And then I have another first cousin who's light with freckles. And so the skin tones are so varied. And that's what prompted me to start with this 1 SKU, is because it worked on everybody's skin tone. It was really amazing. And so then I thought, so many of these companies historically have catered just to white people, just completely excluding us. And I want to contribute to that. I think to set a tone, to be a Black woman who creates products for all skin tones, sends a message, not both from a business perspective, but from, just a people perspective. And hopefully, and we're starting to see it, these companies are starting to follow suit. We can't exclude any skin color. And especially in the Black community, when we have so many different skin colors. So just consider all the different skin tones.
I love it. And, speaking of, I know that, this has also helped the growth of your brand. And I want to talk about, you kind of mentioned some of the retail stores that you're in now. I want to talk about the retail process. So your brand is featured in, like you mentioned, CVS, Bed Bath & Beyond, and also a new one coming up next year. Working in the works. Can you speak about the process of getting into these major retailer stores, especially from, as you mentioned, a bootstrap brand with no funding and now moving into that direction?
Yeah. So it was interesting, though. I'm asked this question often, and there was no real activity on my part that, it was the universe and us being prepared. So I was sought after. We would get emails. These companies would reach out to us. Literally everyone reached out to us and asked if we were interested in partnering with them. So we were very fortunate in that regard. As far as the process goes, it's a lot of work. And especially our launch in CVS, it was very expensive. So you have to understand the best terms to ask for, because getting in a big national retailer, that's only part of the battle. There are so many different costs that most people that I wasn't aware of, like chargebacks and penalties on shipping if something was wrong, if a label wasn't right. I mean, you could be looking at thousands of dollars, or if it was late. So you cannot just, or you should not just enter into a relationship with a retailer unless you fully understand the terms. And if it's a big retailer and you don't have the experience, hire a broker who has the experience that can help you. But it was, you have a lot of vendor upload and you have to get your UPC codes, and it's a lot. And so you want to consider that before you just jump in. If you have one or two SKUs, it's easier because that's easier to manage. But we were fortunate enough to start out in smaller stores. We started with Credo Beauty, who had 8 chains around the nation, and then just continued to expand. And so the learning curve was a little softer on us because we just grew gradually. It feels like it was a fast growth, but we've been in business for 6 years now. And so a lot has happened over that time period.
And when did you know that you were ready for retail?
Oh, I thought we were ready from the beginning until I figured out all that it entailed. I was like, wait, oh, great, we're going to go in this store. And then, everything started hitting us, what we had to do. Fortunately, we had all of our UPC codes. I hired a consultant in the very beginning just because we were OTC. I didn't understand. There were specific labeling requirements like the font size and what needs to go on. And so hiring that consultant in the beginning really helped me. So those are the kind of critical decisions you need to make in the beginning. And really, again, it really depends on what you're doing. That's a requirement for sun. But if it's not sun and it's not supplements, or it's not something that requires FDA approval, then it's just not that difficult. But going into a national retailer is going to be challenging. So you need to make sure that you're prepared and you have a strong team and someone on that team who has a great deal of experience in dealing with national retailers.
Love that. And how would you say the in-store experience differs from the online experience?
Well, think of, just for example, with CVS, it's exposure for the brand. So it's great brand awareness. It's a great form of just organic marketing because people are going to see the brand. They're going to see the brand and they're going to slowly begin to recognize the name. And that's so important for brand awareness because the more your name is like Coca-Cola, we all know it. So we trust it. If we saw an off-brand Coke in the grocery aisle, we're less likely to purchase that. So we'll go for the Coke. So having this presence with so many people walking through these stores is really helpful. Online, you have to spend, which we do, thousands of dollars a month to get that same kind of recognition. So there's a big difference. You still have to work to get people to go into the stores and to understand it, but you're going to have a lot of people that just naturally go into the store and you can get that kind of marketing just, as an after effect.
Okay. And so someone is listening and they're like, okay, I'm looking to go into the retail. I'm looking to be a part of the retail experience. What are some other things that they should expect, whether it be, what does the relationship look like whether it's like where your product is placed? Like, I don't have a product business, so I'm just asking these questions of someone. But like, what are some of the inside scoops on things to expect for a listener in terms of that relationship?
Yeah, you really don't have a voice in where your products are placed unless you pay for certain placements. Mm-hmm. And they put you where they feel is best. And sometimes it's great and sometimes it's not. In the smaller stores, you may have to pay for store support to go into the stores to help sell your products, to get them moving, or you'll have to pay for samples. so that they could give out samples to their customers so the customers can become familiar with your brand before they purchase it. So there are a lot of things that, you have to participate. You don't just put your products in the store and move on to the next thing. You have to work. We spent a lot of time and effort finding store support, sending people from our team, sometimes spending a Friday or a Saturday in a store to help, the perfume girls when you're in a big department stores. Well, it's very similar in the smaller stores, developing relationships with the team, and hopefully if they like you enough, they'll really push your products. And so those things are important. It's just, it's a wide scale effort to make sure that you're successful.
And Katonya, what does it look like to know if a brand is a good fit or not? And what does it look like to, potentially end that relationship if it's agreeable by both parties or not?
Yeah, well, it depends on what they sell. So we were obviously a good fit in the clean beauty spaces, but we had a retailer, I had a buyer that we just didn't work well with. It was very non-responsive, and so we had to terminate that relationship. So you just never know, because you're dealing with human beings and you want to make sure that the team that you're working with really wants you in there, not to just fill a diversity quota or anything like that, but really wants to see you succeed. And that's tricky to know in advance. So a lot of it is just trial and error. If you get the opportunity, I would take it and then see what happens.
I love it. And for you, what are some of the things that you wish you would have known before?
Oh, wow. I wish I would have known before that the senior editor at Inc. magazine told me one day, she said to hire slowly and fire quickly. And I spent a lot of time, when you're a small business and you hire people, you spend so much time with them, you develop these friendly bonds. So when they're no longer performing and you need to fire them, it's difficult to do. And so I've learned that the hard way. So I wish I knew that before. And I just wish I knew how much money this was all going to take. But yeah, I think everything else, I was an entrepreneur really for all my life. So I understood the ups and downs of business. And this was just a different kind of business.
Love that honest answer. And so what do you think it is that has really catapulted your brand and helped you get this award-winning status? And what are some of the things that you think you're doing right?
I think we're doing right, which is being super committed to our ingredients. I think the world is moving in the direction of clean, just in general, sustainability, things that are good for our oceans and our animals. And we've always done that. And it wasn't instantly received. It was, was still, people didn't always understand what mineral looked like and why it looked like this. It was so much easier to buy chemical sunscreen because it naturally doesn't have a residue. It's just, it's a different formula and a different process. So, but we still did it even though it was hard. And I think that that's recognized and that put us ahead of the curve. So now mineral is having its moment and we were poised to do it. So I think people recognize that more and more. I know that they do. And I think just trying to be authentic, trying to just be honest, to say what I needed to say and continuing to be myself, I think it always helps. I really do believe that it always helps. And even if it hurts in the short term, ultimately it will help.
Yes, I agree. And let's talk about sustaining and scaling in the future. So you kind of mentioned the fact that you started from 1 SKU to 11, and then also the growth that you've received. I want to talk about what did it look like, the process of expansion and the decisions behind expanding into, offering different things in different variations of the product.
It's interesting. When I first launched in one of the stores, our first stores, I would get these emails from the buyers. Okay, what's newness for next year? Newness was this word that I heard a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It is important to the retailers, and I'm assuming the consumer, that you have consistent, innovative offerings. So we learned that after the fact that we needed to continue to grow. And it was important for me also because I feel like if we created products that could be layered on, that could be used in different scenarios, adding additional sunscreen can't hurt. So I think that it's important to just make products that are easy to use and make people want to use them. So we really wanted to just create more products and more like our highlighters, which are great. So whenever I put those on top of my sunscreen, then I have a natural glow, but I also have additional SPF protection under my eyes or on the tip of my nose where the sun burns. And so it's really important for us to just be really creative in thinking about how we could make more products and new products that people will receive well.
Got it. Because one of the things you mentioned earlier is the fact that when you're getting into these retailers, as sometimes it's easier if you have lesser products. And so also it's just like almost not giving everything at once, what you're saying?
Well, you can't because it's very expensive to make. I mean, you can if you're a Colgate or a Maybelline or one of these other big brands, but it's nice when you can launch a new line. Like a lot of these celebrities, they have people funding them off the back because of their name. So they can launch a new line with 6, 7, 8 SKUs because they have the resources to do that. But let's be honest, most of us don't. Most of us don't have the resources to just launch an entire line at once. So we launch what we can at once. But it would have been lovely to just, come out the door with all these different products. It just doesn't work like that. Not for most of us.
And how does it work with, I guess it would be based on the terms of the contract when it comes to how many products are placed into a retailer and making sure that you're able to meet those demands? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, the buyer decides which of your products they're interested in. So you send them samples of your product line. They decide which ones they want to carry. And they decide how many they're going to order per store. They decide how many stores you're going to start in. And they make all of those decisions. And you have to commit to being able to provide and fulfill those purchase orders. So based on if they tell you, okay, we're going to put you in 1,000 stores and we're going to take 2 of your SKUs, then you need to make sure they're going to give you a forecast of approximately how many they anticipate purchasing. And if they don't, you have to request that because you can't know how to do business if you don't have an idea of what they're going to order. So, but they will give you that, and you have to be prepared to fulfill those orders or it will damage your relationship with that buyer.
And Katonya, have you ever had a situation where there was such an increase in demand that you were overwhelmed or trying to figure out how you were going to meet that demand? If so, how did you handle that?
Oh, yeah. Well, just Black Lives Matter. Remember the whole Black Lives Matter thing? We sold out twice. And it was really stressful because with sunscreen, you can't just make a product and fill it. So every batch that you make has to be tested, and the batch is tested. And then once it's filled into the components, it has to be tested again. So we couldn't fill it back. And I was like, oh my God, we're missing all these sales. So it was really stressful, but it was what it was. You could say it's a blessing and a curse because you're excited to have sold all of those things, but I don't want to not be able to fill an order. I don't want to not be able to give the customer the product that they want or the buyer the PO that needs to be filled. So people think it's cute, but it's not. It's really stressful for a business owner when that happens.
Yeah. And I think about, we had one of the founders of Black and Bold on the podcast, and he was talking about the same thing. And I think that the one thing is, this thing on Black Twitter is good side. because you don't want to be on Black Twitter's bad side. Oh my God.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
And
true.
that makes me think about, because sometimes I see people out here, like you said, that some people think that that's a good thing. And sometimes they may pre-order or have the option of pre-order. Like, what are your thoughts on that? And just making sure, like you said, that you have the product on hand. And yeah, so what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah, we definitely did pre-orders, and we were
Mm-hmm.
really fortunate that people were in such good spirits then that they were. We can't believe how many people waited for their orders to come in. So so we definitely believe in pre-orders,
Mm-hmm.
100%. More importantly, we're really trying hard now to make sure that we don't sell out. So,
Right. I get it. I get it. And so let's talk about, because this is the retailer space and you're in this industry, that was once, very underserved. And I want to talk about the importance of a customer experience dealing with retail, and just how do you make sure that you have a great customer experience, and what does that look like for you?
yeah, well, we always try to respond to customers' concerns or complaints. Our biggest problem, I think, is with customers just not like, I'll give you an example. We had a customer who received two products from us, the mass line, the prestige line, and she wanted to return one. One, we accidentally sent her the wrong shade. So we said, okay, that's fine. We'll send you a label and you can send it back, and then we'll send you the correct shade. She's like, well, no, I don't have time for that. I'm too busy. I said, well, okay, we'll send you the label and the box. So you can just put in the box, drop it off. She worked at a hospital, at the nurses stations, and they can, I mean, we try. No, this is horrible customer service. If you sent
Oh,
me,
Lord.
why should I? And I was like, oh my gosh, we're not going to just give you like, and so sometimes you just have customers who just won't get it. But for the most part, it's just really important to respond to emails, to when they go on our website, on our chat. We get to them right away, and you're not going to please every customer, and you can't let that be a deterrent, but you have to make it a policy to do the best that you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do you ever feel like, I know I hear this often in the community, how as a Black business owner, staying on your toes all the time, because feeling that pressure of everyone behind you. If I mess up, everybody's going to hate Black businesses. So what are your thoughts on that, and how do you deal with that?
I used to feel that way when I had my construction company, because not only was I Black, but I was a woman.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really feel that way. I don't have those feelings anymore. We really just wanted an opportunity, and there are some really incredible brands out here doing incredible things, and we deserved an opportunity to be on the shelves next to all of the white-owned brands. And I just know what we're capable of. So I don't think about that. I think that was just a thing that we use. I've heard so many Black people say, that's why I don't do business with Black people, because it's just a horrible way of looking at us, and we have to expect more from each other. But no, I know what we're capable of. I've seen what the Black brands out there have done. So I honestly don't think like that. And I think it's important that we just move and continue to move forward, just like all these other companies, because we're no different.
Yes, I love that. And I like that because from a retailer's perspective, I, of course, wanted to hear that response, but I thank you for sharing that. And okay, now let's switch gears and talk about the work that you're doing. So more of the work that you're doing. So in addition to being the CEO of Unsun Cosmetics, Inc., you've added author to your list of many titles. And I want to talk about your book, Where Did My Mother Go? Yes, I did my research. I want to talk about your children's book, Where Did My Mother Go? And what inspired you to write the book, and what did you want the reader to take away from the book?
Oh, okay. If you've done your research, you know that my 18-year-old passed away 2 years ago in a car accident. And as a result of that, I went on this journey of healing. I grew up in the church. I believed everything in the church. And so all the things that I learned on this journey were so different. The fact that Ryan was still with me, I had some beautiful experiences with his presence. And I know for a fact that he's here. I know for a fact that we don't die, that we just leave our physical bodies. And I felt like it was really important because when children, sometimes we don't bring the kids to funerals and we just give them this generic answer, oh, they're in heaven. But it's so much more to that. And I figured that it was so healing for me to know, not to think, not to hear from, another person, but to know that Ryan was still here and that our loved ones are very much present in our lives. I believe that a child who knew that after losing someone as important as their mom would feel comforted by that and could start looking at the world differently, knowing that their mom was a part of everything that they saw. So it's the first in a book of series. And so that was where that came from.
My heart goes out to you, and I just thank you for sharing that, and also just being that light in the world and sharing that experience, because like you said, a lot of people don't talk about these things. And I want to ask about the realities of dealing with that as a business owner. Like, how did you keep pushing? Because sometimes it feels as though when we have these moments in our lives that we feel like we just can't go on. So how did you keep pushing and just keep showing up?
Yeah, I didn't show up. I stopped for a while. I didn't care about anything. It was just a struggle to just want to be here. It was, I was quite obsessed with not being here. And so I didn't work. But like I said, the universe carries us. Our loved ones carried us, and they carried the business. They gave me the break that I needed. They made sure that things still happened. And then when I went back to work, it was a bit of a mess, but there were some really great things waiting for us. And one was a CVS deal. So I would never say to you, oh, I just powered through. I just made it. No, that would be a lie. I didn't do any of that, but I did come back and I do push through. And every day it's a challenge, and some days even more so. But it's what we do, and it's the life that we live, right?
Yeah. Love that transparent answer and keeping it real. We got to keep it real. Yeah. And I want to talk about what the future looks like for Unsun Cosmetics, and what are some of I know you kind of mentioned and hinted at a deal coming up. Are we trying to give out Black to Business exclusive on what deal that is?
No. Contracts week. Maybe once the contract's signed next week, maybe I'll email it to you. Okay. But yeah, so we're just continuing to grow to make clean mineral-based sunscreen available to everyone, and just continuing to add cool products, and just getting out there. We'll be out there a lot more next year, and so hopefully we'll see you out and about.
I love it. And now for you as the CEO, and what does life look like for you in terms of taking care of yourself and making sure that you're, as well as taking care of the business, but most importantly, taking care of yourself? Maybe it's how do you practice self-care and just unwinding?
Yeah, that's the most important thing, because if we don't take care of ourselves, nothing else works. Ourselves. So I have a very strong meditation practice. I do a morning meditation before I even check an email or text message or anything, just to get my day started. I do regular massages, regular Reiki. I do meditation retreats at least once a quarter. So that's very important to me. And it helps me. It helps me stay grounded. It helps me deal with any difficulties that arrive. I take a very different approach to how I handle things. So self-care is immensely important, and however you choose to do that.
Love it. And Katonya, looking back, like what advice would you give to someone in their first 2 years of business?
Start slow. Don't overwhelm yourself. And the main thing is bring people around you or make them a part of your team or as a mentor who knows the business better than you do. It'll save you a lot of time, money, and headaches.
And speaking of time and money, we have to make sure that we're spending it wisely as entrepreneurs. So I want to talk about some of the tools and resources that have really helped you stay on top of your game in your journey. If you could share some of your top ones with my audience.
I think, well, the tool, my biggest tool is my bookkeeper and my accountant. They keep me together. QuickBooks, which we're all able to use. We use Slack for the team to make sure no balls are dropped and no one can say, oh, I don't remember you telling me that. So all of those things really help keep us together. So Slack for the team, for the communications throughout the team, a strong bookkeeper and a strong accountant. Because trying to manage those invoices and POs and all of that stuff yourself is just going to leave a pile of papers on your desk and a mess when it's time to do your taxes.
I agree 100%. And what is the best risk that you've taken?
Starting this business. I didn't know anything about it. It was just something I was passionate about and decided to move forward with it.
Yes. And finally, what does it mean to you to be Black in business?
Oh, it means that I could be an example for all the young girls. And it's been this way since I was in my construction business, Black woman handling big accounts and federal accounts and young girls who could do that, to see me doing that, or a Black woman who started the sunscreen brand, that people could look to me and be inspired. And so that's what being Black in business means to me, taking this role very seriously.
So beautiful. And representation definitely matters.
Definitely.
And Katonya, I know people who are listening have found so much value from this conversation, and I know they're going to be curious as to how they could connect with you, find you, and support you. So please do share some of the ways that they can do that.
We're Unsun Cosmetics everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and our website, unsuncosmetics.com.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing so much knowledge with us. I will say that this conversation has been one of the first that we've had, really just speaking about, products, businesses, and retailers. So I know our audience is going to love it. And I really do thank you for sharing all of the knowledge and gems.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad that we switched it up this week because this conversation was golden. And speaking of golden, as Katonya mentioned, Black does crack if you're not prioritizing taking care of your skin. So make sure that you're doing that through moisturizing and following up with a good sunscreen. And as I mentioned when Katonya spoke about the common myths surrounding Black people and sunscreen, I used to be one of those people. I'm not going to say I thought that sunscreen was bad or we shouldn't use it. I just never thought about implementing it in my regimen. So now I definitely do that, and it's in my regimen truly, not only for protection, but I think it helps with keeping an even skin tone. So that's my 2 cents. Anywho, if you're looking to get your products in retail stores, I know you learned a lot today, such as understanding the approval process, managing relationships, but also knowing when it's time to gracefully bow out. Learn more about Katonya and Unsun by visiting blacktobusiness.com/110. I love you dearly and appreciate you for showing up with me this week. Chat with you next week, same time, same place.